Hello, hello. Good morning and happy Thursday. So, today's live, I want to talk about the topic of what to do when your labs look fine, but you don't feel fine and you're not doing well. Okay, so how can you approach this? Because it can be a very overwhelming situation to be in. You can end up feeling like, am I imagining this, or are there no other options for me? Right? It's easy to fall into despair if you're not able to match up how you're feeling with what your test results might be showing. And this can be one of two situations. It could be that you don't feel good, you go in to get checked out, or you can also get checked out, the results end up matching how you feel, and you're like, yay, I'm good, let's do XYZ to get me back on track. You do all the things, your labs come back, the numbers look fine, but you still feel like crap, right? It could be one or the other. So what I like to do, or what I like to think about in this type of situation, is that you just always, first, you want to be mindful of not falling into despair, which I know is hard, but be mindful of not falling into that space. Also, remember that the tests that we have in general for everything, right? Those tests are just based on what we are able to measure so far. Like, what I mean by, as far as like science and the instruments and the methods that we have, right? We've come a long way as humans. We can measure a lot of things, but we're still not able to measure everything. We're still not able to see everything, to detect everything. Because don't forget, there are trillions and trillions of cells in your body. So we're not God, we're not Mother Nature. We don't know everything. We only know what we know at the moment. We only know what to do. We only know how to do what we do at this time in our evolution. So just keep that in mind. Now, the three things that I do want you to always go back to in such a situation is to go back to what I consider to be the pillars and the foundational elements to truly be in health, right? Not just to get temporary relief, but to truly be in health. And just to quickly give you a visual, let me share my screen. This is actually right here on, like, if you were to land on the page for my community. So I have this graphic here, right? And I talk about nourish, move, and replenish. So these three pillars really are the core of everything that I do. And, like, for example, whether it's in the sleep course, I'm always talking about these three things, right? Even on a monthly basis, we're exploring these three things. And the reason why I have boiled down everything to these three is because it doesn't matter who you are, male or female, whatever your age, somewhere in these three pillars lies the answer to any challenges that you are facing when it comes to your health, right? Now, depending on you personally, your history, and what's going on, maybe you only need to focus more on one, and maybe the other two you don't need, or maybe you need a hybrid of two, or a hybrid of all three. Okay, but this is now where it becomes important to do some experimentation. And what I want to offer to you is that actually, in a situation like this is a great opportunity, even though it may not feel that way, but it's actually a great opportunity to really design your own care plan, right? To not feel like every time something is happening to you, you have to run out and find some answer. This actually gives you the ability to create a care plan that works for you. Of course, there are situations where you still need to go see a professional, but we want to get to a place where we really feel confident and rooted in our own ability to address our basic care. And the truth of the matter is, from my perspective, perimenopause in particular and being in midlife has just been overly medicalized. It's not a medical problem. It is a phase of life. It is the most natural phase of life to go through. It can be challenging because there's so much nonsense around us that creates challenges for the body. But it is also important that we have the ability to separate those two and not just talk about it like this is just what it is, right? And by the way, for anybody watching this, if you have any questions, drop them in the chat at any time. Feel free, and I will make sure to get to it before this live, okay? And so, yeah, so going back to this idea of nourishing your body, moving your body, and replenishing. So, nourishing, you want to now take some time to evaluate your nourishment. How are you doing when it comes to food? How are you doing when it comes to things like herbs? Potentially even supplements, right? All of those are things that feed into your nourishment. And of course, the stuff that is alive is always going to trump the stuff that comes in the bottle because you were meant to actually live on real food, not just stuff that comes out of a bottle, okay? The stuff in the bottle, on the jar, those are a support. Then the second thing is movement, as far as exercise. What the intensity is, that's up to what your body can handle. But how much are you moving? Even for me, like sitting and working in this chair, I have to stand up frequently. I have to take quick walks, right? Because otherwise, I can feel you feel the heaviness, right? So how much are you moving, not just in terms of formal exercise, but also throughout your day and the breaks that you're taking, right? That is also critical for every human being because we know any type of sedentary life just creates chaos. And movement is also so important, not just because it supports us physically, but because it also supports us mentally and spiritually, like everything, even like your spinal fluid, right? If we're not moving frequently, that spinal fluid, which already, slows down in terms of its movement as we age, that can also slow down even more because it needs our help, right? And that's going up through the spine, up into the brain. There are so much related to, the control centers, even for our hormones residing in the brain, and just making sure that all of that is working properly, that our mental health is in a good place. And movement does so much for that. And the last piece is replenishment, right? So replenishing here, this has to do with more on the energetic and spiritual side of things, right? So what are you doing in terms of activities that are either bringing more energy into your life or causing you to leak out energy? So this is that's a huge bucket. And oftentimes that's where a lot of the power lies, is in that replenishing bucket, because a lot of the things that we cannot detect in tests, right, and in lab reports, are being dictated by that aspect of our life, right? And even though we can't see, what we call energy, we know it truly has an effect on our lives, on our physical body, and on our health and our overall well-being. So that replenishing bucket can be things like formal practices, right? Meditation, mindfulness, going out into nature and just taking a walk in nature and being present and experiencing what it's like for your feet to hit the ground, to hear the birds, to hear the sound of the wind against your ears, right? Like the details. So you don't have to even sit down and close your eyes to be present. You can just do that during a walk, for example. But that is something that starts to bring your energy back because you are fully in the moment. You're not taking a walk and putting your body in that walk while your mind is someplace else. That's where we start to leak energy, is where we're not there with the thing that we're doing. So the body is being told to walk, but then the brain is busy doing something else. That disconnect is where we leak energy. That disconnect is where a lot of things can seemingly go wrong in the body, but of course they're not going wrong. The body is just compensating the best it can and adapting the very, very best that it can. So that's one aspect of the replenishment. Mindful movements also, help when it comes to the replenishment. And then even other things again, like what we're reading, what we're listening to, who we're hanging out with, right? Like literally just where is our attention going to? If we want to keep it simple, because where our attention goes is where our energy flows. And your energy is not abstract, it is your life force. And we are all going to expire one day, i.e., we're all going to die one day, right? So, in the time that we're here before that expiration date arrives, our job and our only job is to how much of my life force, how much of the energy that's in my battery, how much of that is available to me versus not. That's literally it. And you can get energy from Whole Foods, right? You can get energy, like I said, from being outside. You can get energy in lots of different ways. But the whole game, if you're in a place where there is that disconnect between how you feel and what your lab reports are showing, is you've got to now evaluate those three pillars: the nourish, the move, and the replenish, to see where you might need to lean into. And oftentimes, we can try to avoid the issue, but oftentimes, we know that actually I'm doing really well over here, but this is what I've been neglecting, or I've been waiting for a convenient time or a good time to do this. And of course, there is no convenient time, because if you're not doing well, this is the time. Like you're already in inconvenience, right? So getting to a convenient time is to actually start the process in the middle of the inconvenience. That's how we get to convenience. So that's really the core of what I wanted to share with you, is to think about those three things, because no matter what it is, it's always going to boil down to that. We haven't come up with some new thing that enables humans, to thrive, right? Every human body just needs those three things. So, and I like to just do my very best to keep things simple for you guys. So it's not about, it's not about so much, it's not about starting first at like, what's the specific supplement, because that's already diving into too much of a detail. It's more about, let's just look at nourishment overall. Let's just look at movement overall. And then you can start going into, yeah, it needs to be this supplement, it needs to be this type of movement. But we don't need to, the thing itself is not as important, because there's lots of different exercises, right? And they're all great. So really, you could choose to do anything if you were just consistent with it and doing it with the right intentions, you'd be fine, right? So it's less about the specific thing and just more about that high level understanding of like where your attention needs to go. So that's it for today's broadcast, and thank you for everyone that was live today. And I had a couple of people pop in and out, so thank you for being here. And if you're watching the replay, if you have any questions or comments or perspectives around this, feel free to share that in the comment section. I will get back to you, okay? And thanks again. I will see you next time. Bye-bye.